So, obviously everybody knows Inman News. I always like to say it's like the CNN of the real estate industry. And that's a huge compliment coming from me because I'm from Atlanta and I know Ted Turner.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've always thought about you kind of as this, oracle of the real estate industry. You have always, you've heard agents say this, that, and the other, but you have never been someone who failed to validate the legitimacy of claims. And you've never been afraid to take on people when you felt like that what they were saying was not true or accurate. Tell me a little bit about where does that journalism come, like that investigative reporter come from?
Yeah, it's probably less investigative and more traditional journalism was pretty simple. We tried really hard every day to be unbiased. We always talked to multiple sources. We tried to check the facts carefully. We tried to be balanced and then report it. And I started out doing that in print media, starting in California with papers like the San Francisco Examiner, LA Times. And I had great editors who trained me. And I loved journalism from being a kid. I was a sports writer. I was a runt, and I learned the best way to handle bullies was to write about sports because all the bullies were jocks. And I learned that the power of the print. But it was really about traditional journalism. It's not fancy pantsy. It's more like carpentry and police work and teachers where there's certain things you learn to do and you keep doing them over and over. One of the problems I think with media is it's become celebrity journalism, like celebrity realtors and celebrity chefs, generally are celebrity longevity, a field I'm in now. And I don't think that's necessarily good for any of those industries, but in journalism, particularly bad. And let's just take an example. Any given day in the last few years, Anderson Cooper was having dinner with the Clintons, in all likelihood, in the Hamptons. And any given day now, the Fox News personalities, celebrity journalists, are at Mar-a-Lago. And in my day, we left the newsroom and went to a dive bar and hung out with cops and construction workers because our duty was to challenge authority. And so what you see with me on stage is I relate to the people in the audience who I consider my readers. Those are I even get chills talking about it. Those are the people, one, that pay my bills, but they're my readers or the people watching us. And my challenge, or not my challenge, it's really an easy challenge. My duty to those people is to challenge authority, and the authorities tend to be big shots on stage. The only pass I give are exemptions are entrepreneurs, start with nothing. Like an everyday realtor starts by, using their personal credit card to this day. And like an entrepreneur uses their personal credit card to start a company. So everything about me, pretty transparent, but it's really that general concept, those set of values. I made a lot of mistakes, by the way. I didn't always do it as well as I could. I also had people on the stage who stood up to me, Gary Keller, Barry Diller, Barbara Corcoran, many people who took, as we say, took the mic away from the person that does the interview. In journalism, you never want to hand the mic to them, either overtly or accidentally, but sometimes it happens because they're so good at what they do. I mean, Gary was a master, Barbara's a master, and Barry Diller was a master. So those are three of hundreds of interviews where I felt like, I gave up the mic, and my duty as a journalist to not have the upper hand or control them, because you can't, but just not to let them run the show. Because when they run the show, they can get away with saying whatever they want.
Well, and I remember my first Inman that I went to. I sat in the front row center
Oh,
and I was there at like 8 o'clock to make sure I got my seat and that I was
fantastic.
front and center to see you. And what I loved was you weren't afraid to, confront the popular narrative and really bring out the truth. And so I think that type of, when I saw that and that impartial, really, and you're exactly right, you were asking the CEOs, you were asking the big wigs the questions that were on my mind, like what I wanted to ask, like, come on, tell me the truth, do it, be honest. Like you were telling them that. That was what I just fell in love with, was like, like you weren't afraid, and you were impartial, and you were asking what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting in the way you said that. I always try to put myself in, as I say, the plastic chair of the woman who flew all the way to New York City or Las Vegas or San Francisco, paid all that money, gave up her time away from her business. What would she want to know? And I found two things. They want me to ask the tough questions. And they also, if they had a thought bubble, they would be wanting to say, give them hell. Like particularly take the last 3 years, Glenda, it's amazing how the leadership of the real estate industry let down the everyday agent. We're in the pickle over lawsuits because of 20 years of mismanagement. It wasn't 2 or 3 years. Many, many years ago, I was subpoenaed. I was on the right side of the angels by the Department of Justice and, had 40,000 records subpoenaed. And I sat, before a half dozen or a dozen investigators. And the same issues that they were talking about then and worried about are the issues that came back to surface. And the arrogance of leadership is the worst thing. And I've had it in my life where I've made mistakes, but you get stars in your eyes and your head blows up. You have to. And our leaders, they get paid lots of money and they get big bonuses no matter what happens and very little responsibility or culpability. So I feel like it was my duty to go after them. Go after them in a civil way, but not let them off the hook.
I love that. So you've kind of pivoted. You're still, here in our real estate industry, but you have a passion project with living longer. And I ask this selfishly, is it because you're getting older that that the need to understand how to live longer is more urgent now than ever? Did that kind of fuel this new passion that you have, or have you always been passionate about health and wellness and the best quality of life?
Well, the answer to the last question is no. I'm paying for the sins of my past. I was a nerdy journalist sitting behind a computer. All my friends were jogging in California and doing all this stuff, and they would urge me. Now, the good news, I have no knee injuries or anything they have now, but it's brand new. What most people don't know is I always had great teams running Inman. And those teams, so I went off because my attention span is so short. I went off and started all kinds of different companies, home gain, ebook company, video company, climate data company, all kinds of things. So I've always had this, attention deficit problem. I don't know what they call it, but and so that's just my impulse. I'm an entrepreneur. I see something, I glom onto it. This is a little different, but it's the same. They're all media companies. They all subscribe to the theory that independent media is valuable. No conflicts of interest. Just like at Inman, didn't own stock in Zillow, didn't have, no one paid us to be on stage, or no one paid us to be a news hole. I mean, there are probably some mistakes we made along the way, but that was really, we lived by that. And in longevity, what I discovered is this whole industry is packed with charlatans and promoters, very, very similar to real estate. And then there's like in real estate, there's a traditional real estate industry, and then there's the new tech innovators. And we used to say our job is to connect the two of them. But so you had tried and tested practices of the traditional real estate companies, which was great. But you also had a lot of, they had their own language. They only talked to each other. They made fun of realtors behind their backs. That always shocked me. I met, executives at NAR that made fun of realtors, and it was like, it's like people making fun of taxpayers. And so it's very similar in that way. But in the medical field, what's at stake is your life. And at one end, you have the medical elite, which is kind of like the elite of real estate. And they have their own language, their own acronyms. They go to their own conferences. They hang out together. They reinforce their worst behavior. And then the other extreme, you have these, you can live forever. And I call them charlatans, maybe a strong word for some of them. And it doesn't include biohacking. It doesn't include everything, but there's a lot of stuff going on in that end of the spectrum. And there was no middle lane. But my inspiration came from my own life. I made a lot of mistakes and with my health and didn't take care of it. I got 3 stents, some other issues. But what really hit me is I had everything I ever imagined possible in my life. All my dreams came true, everything I wanted to be. I've had this list of three that I read to myself every day, and I renew it every year, and I've been doing it for 30 years, and all of those things came true. Everything that I ever fantasized about. And beautiful family, two wonderful children, five great grandkids. I did what I was taught, which is you raise your kids to be self-reliant and you bury your parents with dignity, which I did. So no one's living in my basement. I have no regrets or resentments about taking care of my wonderful parents who were so, so good to me and gave me every opportunity when they didn't have the resources to do so. And then I have a beautiful wife. I fell madly in love, a woman who changed my life dramatically and made me realize I was taking myself too seriously, that I should never be down because I have so much to be grateful for. And unlike your 20s, which I compare your 70s to, when everything before the great catastrophe, Zobri the Greek nailed it, the wife, the mortgage, the mother-in-law, the children, and then you're kind of preoccupied for 30 years taking care of that. Your 70s are like that. You have freedom, do whatever you want. Then you had to worry about the whole catastrophe. Now, guess what you have to worry about, Glenn? You have to worry about the Grim Reaper knocking on our door. So I fully engaged in the whole catastrophe. I did all that, did it as good as I could. But then I began to realize, wow, if I'm going to, I got to avoid this guy showing up my door, the end of life. So I got really down and dirty about trying to figure out what this whole longevity thing was about. And it's a mystery still, for all of us. We say we don't know what's in outer space and we don't know what's under the sea, but I don't know what's in my own body. And so I got into testing, trying. I was kind of the guinea pig for my audience, like I used to do in real estate when I'd buy and sell a house and openly share all the bad and the good of the experience. Similarly, here I've been doing that, and what I realized, I knew nothing about my body. In fact, what little I did get were from trainers or coaches or gyms or, this is not necessarily a holistic view of your health. I just saw people lined up to go to a gym, and I thought, I wonder how many of them know, you know, all the ramifications of what they're doing and whether they're looking at their whole lives holistically. And I'm not saying I'm an expert. I never sold real estate, so I didn't know shit about selling real estate. But I am pretty good at observing, and so that inspiration came from my own personal journaling. So this is just an extension of that, where I said, "Wow, I'm learning a lot. I should share it with others." And that's a long, rambling answer to your simple question.